UniverseOlympics Heat 1 by Amanda Dubin. What if winning the gold medal at the Olympics wasn't the end? What if it was only the beginning? Ambassador Liew. Chapter 1. The meeting. They were given only a time, location, floor number, and date. 9:30 a.m., United Nations Secretariat Building, 22nd floor, Sunday, October 19, 2036. Any and all digital or wearable devices were to be left outside on the table next to the door. As people slowly started trickling in, signs reading UNOOSA directed them to a long rectangular wood-paneled conference room. Its design was reminiscent of the 1970s. Men and women, both young and old, cautiously walked in. There was a silent recognition among the attendees. Everyone was an athlete who had competed at an Olympic Games. One by one, the athletes, each with a coach by their side, sat down at an elongated wooden conference table with a name card in front of each chair. It was an odd choice of location for a meeting of world-class athletes. The UN building in New York normally invited only a few athletes at a time to speak in front of the General Assembly for their separate causes, but the assembly was quiet today. And this was the first time that so many athletes had come together at the UN without being told why. There had been absolute secrecy. Before opening the invitation to the meeting, the recipient had to sign a non-disclosure agreement of confidentiality. If the media were informed about this meeting, whoever leaked it to the press would be excluded. They would also be prosecuted based on the agreement's terms. Most of the athletes complied. One person, who shall remain nameless, did leak the meeting plan to a media source who was fortunately close to the UN director. That athlete's invitation was immediately revoked. The lawsuit is pending, and exclusive first reporting rights on what was about to occur, effective at the appropriate time and place, were offered to that powerful news outlet. There were some familiar faces loitering around the room. Sitting by himself at the far end of the conference table was the most famous athlete of all. He had become the face of the Summer Olympics completed 2 months ago in Nairobi, Kenya. More than half of the people sitting at the table had in one way or another gained notoriety during those games. It was the first time Kenya had ever held the Olympics, and for the most part it was able to put on a good show. African nations had become players on the World Olympic stage. As the tardy athletes and coaches settled in, the room gradually grew silent in quiet expectation. The lights changed, and a stillness descended as a very smartly dressed Asian woman walked in. She spoke in English, as was the custom in this almost century-old New York building.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for coming to the satellite office of the UNOOSA. Usually we would have met in our headquarters in Vienna, but for various reasons this meeting needed to be held here in New York. I am UNOOSA Director Shi, and I am here to welcome you and congratulate you.
The crowd of people sitting around the conference table stirred for a moment and mumbled in confusion.
Most of you were in either the recent 36th Olympiad Summer Games in Nairobi or the 2034 Winter Olympic Games in Harbin, China. It is because of your special achievements in those games that you all have been asked here today. But let me go no further without introducing the real reason you are here. Please let me introduce Ambassador Liew.
Every one of the athletes sitting around the table audibly gasped. Ambassador Liew was known around the world, and not a single person in the room, but for Director Shi, had ever met him before. A very tall, gangly person meandered into the room and up to the head of the conference table. At well over 7 feet tall, he was almost too big and proportionable for the table. He had 2 arms, 2 legs, forward-facing eyes, light hair and skin, and was wearing an appropriate gender-neutral outfit, but one characteristic set him apart from everyone in the room. He wasn't human. Almost 2 years had passed since it had happened. The world, as every person at that table knew it, had changed. Nothing had changed individually per se, but something had changed for the whole of humanity. It started slowly, as such things often do. One night, an astronomer in Australia discovered a rapid-moving object through her telescope. At first, she thought it was a new asteroid, but as days crawled into weeks, the object went from an asteroid approaching our moon, with a bright illumination and odd trajectory that no asteroid could ever have, to a shimmery silver ship. This vessel became a worldwide sensation, thanks to the internet and the smartphones in the hands of almost every human being on the planet. Billions of people watched as the large, silvery cigar-shaped ship slowly made its way to a position halfway between our moon and the new International Space Station and stopped. At that point, all doubt dissipated. It wasn't a man-made object that originated from Earth, it was alien. The Americans, Europeans, Russians, and Chinese jointly sent out a small emergency vehicle to the spot in space where the ship had waited motionless for over a week. The combined mission was made up of a top-secret American Orion spare command module that had been kept ready by the U.S. Space Force in case of emergency, and this was deemed enough of an emergency for launch. The module was a refurbished SpaceX booster rocket, and it jumped off from another smaller space station which was positioned halfway to the moon. The Europeans happened to be represented, because a British astronaut had just started his 5-month rotation on the space station a few weeks prior. Small zero-G mini-drone cameras floated along with the 4 astronauts, American, Russian, Chinese, and the British, as they journeyed to the silver ship waiting patiently in the emptiness of space. It made for the best reality programming in history. The guesstimate was that 6.7 billion people were watching. Almost no work was done by any nation with an internet or television connection for one solid week. Billions and billions of dollars worth of productivity were lost. The stock exchange was shut down for fear of a catastrophic sell-off, or worse. And most of Earth's inhabitants were riveted as they watched the sortie from a space capsule now deemed by the media as Humanity 1. When the astronauts docked with the silver ship, sitting inside waiting alone was Liew. He explained in multiple languages that humanity was currently in a quarantine zone, as it had been for millennia. The zone reached past Pluto into the Kuiper Belt, and only one ship and one ambassador, Liew, were permitted to make initial public contact. He specifically had been chosen because it would be easier for humans to accept another anthropomorphic biped like themselves. And until Liew felt humanity was ready, no further alien contact would be permitted. A waiting period of 1 to 50 years would be implemented until humanity no longer felt threatened by first contact, accepted they weren't alone, and took comfort in the fact that they were one of many life forms in the universe. In time, humans would join with the others if and when humans chose. After the initial live feed from the astronauts, Liew was hardly ever seen in public. For over a year and a half, there were the rare meetings and photo ops with presidents, premiers, heads of state, and religious leaders from all over the world. But the true whereabouts and comings and goings were kept top secret. The spaceship, once it landed in Antarctica, without its main passenger, was never seen again, and Liew had made no other public statements or announcements in the almost 18 months, which was in a way a very good thing. The first month after he showed up, about half the world was convinced they were going to be attacked at any point by alien invaders, like in some bad 1950s science fiction film. Some headed to their bolt-hole secret bunkers, waiting for the doomsday Armageddon that never happened. And the other half went about their daily lives. But life on planet Earth continued as it had for millennia. Almost a year and a half after first contact, most people didn't care anymore. Liew was out of sight, so he was out of mind. Everyone got back to living their normal daily lives. Worrying about an alien with a spaceship didn't put food on their tables or a roof over their heads. There was a recent public sighting of Liew, the first in almost a year. He was a guest at the opening ceremony of the Summer Olympic Games in Nairobi. And this 36th Olympiad was special, unlike any before it. All the countries and athletes acknowledged it as such. It was the first Olympics to truly bring all of humanity together. There was a spirit of camaraderie like never before. Perhaps it was the knowledge that humanity was no longer alone, as evidenced by Liew gazing upon them. Whatever the true reason, the media was still discussing the Olympics. Not since 1896, when the first modern games were held in Athens, had an event brought in such a global audience. They said it reminded humanity of all the great things it could do when working together, and made people glad to be human on planet Earth. Back on the 22nd floor, in the UN conference room, Liew stepped forward at the head of the conference table lined with Olympic athletes.
Greetings and salutations to you all.
he said in a voice that melded deep and high registers and sounded as though two people were speaking at the same time. It was both a little off-putting and beautifully melodious at the same time.
I hope each of you knows who I am, but if you don't, I am Liew, ambassador to Earth. I come from a planet 3/4 of the way across the Milky Way Galaxy. In many respects it is similar to Earth, a green planet on an outer band of this galaxy. But my home planet isn't the specific topic of discussion here today.
All the athletes glanced toward their coaches sitting by their sides, but for one very well-built man who never broke eye contact with Liew.
Let me start with the reason I am here. This is first and foremost an invitation.
Liew opened up his hand and reached upward. Out of his hand flew 4 spheres, each revolving in concentric circles around a 5th yellow rotating orb. The small spheres drifted further apart, hovering over the table. Closest to the center was the red sphere, then the green, blue, and white ones revolving around the larger, glowing yellow orb. A hush fell over the large room as the odd athletes realized they were likely the first humans to witness such advanced technology.
Each athlete here today is formally invited to join me on a trip back to my home quadrant of the galaxy to take part in games.
Games?
Questioned one of 2 identical girls on the far side of the table. Director Shi stepped forward and spoke in a commanding tone.
Please, no questions until after Ambassador Liew is done speaking. Thank you.
These games are very similar to what you humans just had with your Summer Olympic Games in Kenya.
Continued Liew.
Every member planet in the Milky Way Galaxy sends their best athletes to partake in a wide variety of sporting events.
You mean we will be seeing aliens?
Burst out a young man with an American accent.
Well, that is the point. You will be competing with other life forms from other worlds, yes.
Liew pointedly answered the young man's question.
This is a great honor, but there are a few compromises and rules if you wish to come to these games.
The very sprightly young man with light brown hair looked quizzically at his coach and elbowed his side in a "see I told you so" gesture.
First, only the athletes are invited and not the coaches. If you choose to come, you come individually.
Almost every coach in the room looked horrified and quickly glanced over to their protégés. One noticeably older coach shouted,
But
Liew continued, ignoring objections.
Second,
He paused and put his hand up. The coach immediately grew silent.
no one else can know you are going off to compete in these games. No friends, family or heads of state of your individual countries. You all must sign another confidentiality agreement immediately.
Then why go?
Interrupted one of the older female coaches.
Please let me get to Rule 3. If everything goes well, you all will be allowed when you all return home to share with the people of Earth your time and competitions at the games. But if it doesn't go well, then you will never be allowed to speak of it again.
There was a giant rustle of movement and grumbling in the room. Doesn't go well? Someone mumbled in broken English with a heavy accent. What does that mean? Asked another. Liew paused in front of the table until the room regained its silence.
I'm not sure if you all understand what a great honor this is for you.
He continued.
Humanity has been asked well ahead of schedule to take part in the greatest games in the galaxy. You have been asked to introduce yourselves and your planet to the wider universe of other worlds and to be ambassadors for your beautiful planet. You will be the first human beings to meet other life forms besides myself from other worlds, as well as show the galaxy what human beings are capable of doing. This is a chance for Earth. Do well, and Earth's mandatory introductory program could jump ahead by a full generation or more.
Ambassador Liew looked around the table at each of the now silent athletes.
Please understand. We have not asked any of Earth's politicians, heads of state, famous personalities, celebrities, astronauts, world-renowned scientists, authors, or religious leaders to go out and make first contact for humanity. It is you, humanity's finest athletes, who will be the first.
The men and women around the table were left speechless. It was a humbling statement and offer. Liew was correct, except during the Olympics. When were these athletes the first and the chosen? Liew turned to Director Shi, who handed him a small paper list.
As has been done for millennia, Please let me announce each potential candidate for the UniverseOlympics,
stated Liew. Director Shi stepped forward holding a large pile of papers.
If you agree to the terms and conditions, this is the agreement you and your coaches will sign. There will be no digital copy of this agreement. This is legally binding not only on our planet Earth but all others in the galaxy as well.
Liew looked down at the paper Shi had handed to him and started at the top.
This is in no particular order, so let us begin. We, the Universe Olympic Committee, and I, as your ambassador, are proud to invite from planet Earth.
He looked across the long wooden table to a cheerful face.
Amy Ride, from the United States of America for swimming.
A young woman who looked about 17-18 with long brown hair nodded. She was wearing a t-shirt printed with the words, "Let's Ride" in bright red letters on a wave of water, and underneath it in smaller red, white, and blue letters, "Go Team USA." Amy took in a breath and let out a giant squeal.
Thank you,
she said to Liew. Director Shi handed her a large stack of papers.
Please read this carefully.
Liew continued.
Dmitry Petrovich, from Russia for wrestling.
A very large man with long light brown hair pulled back in a ponytail and muscles that could rival Hercules grunted a sound that was neither a yes nor a no, more like present.
Zhang Yasi Chen, from China for gymnastics.
The small, both in frame and in height, Asian girl, who appeared to be barely 15 years old, smiled a little and bowed her head in acknowledgement.
Marvin Rapahand, from Great Britain for triathlon.
Cheers and call me Pappy, please. Good morning, everyone,
he said, nodding to Liew and waving to the other athletes at the table.
Jason William Powell, from the United States of America for decathlon.
A young man smiled. He had light brown skin and bright blue eyes. He was also wearing a t-shirt, but his read "Pow Wow" in front of a silhouette of him throwing a javelin.
Jennifer Washington Lee, from the United States of America for track and field events.
Thank you, Lord Jesus, said Jennifer, who bowed her head down for a brief moment, thanking God for this second chance. She had won every short distance running event but one, the 100-meter hurdles. Her foot caught the second to last hurdle and she tripped, disqualifying. It was a regret that reached deep down in her heart. This opportunity was another chance. And thank you, Ambassador.
Ramon Stead, from Jamaica for bobsled.
Continued Liew. The whole room let out a snicker, then an audible laugh at his home country and sport. Ramon quickly glanced at the other participants, almost defiant, before he smiled a bright white grin against his dark black skin. He joined in with good humor.
That's right. That's right,
he said in a thick Jamaican accent, nodding his head.
You wait and see clear.
I thought it was only gold medalists, Ambassador Liew, asked Jennifer Washington Lee, the African-American woman sitting across the table from Ramon.
I never implied that, Mrs. Washington Lee,
answered Liew sternly. Jennifer Washington Lee quickly closed her mouth and looked around the room. Every athlete in it, including herself, had won a gold medal for his or her individual event in the most recent Summer or Winter Olympic Games. Ramon Stead from Jamaica was the only person without a gold medal in any individual or team event, and whose ranking was below 10th in any world standing for their sport. In fact, if her memory served, since it was a couple of years ago, the Jamaican bobsled team came in 29th in Harbin, China.
Margit Hausmann, from Norway,
continued Liew,
for cross-country skiing and biathlon.
A beautiful blonde with her hair pulled back in a ponytail smiled and nodded to the other athletes.
Stoke the Jam Townsend, from the United States of America for halfpipe and slopestyle.
Stoked,
yelled the very young-looking kid, who appeared all of 16 at the mere mention of his name.
So stoked,
he screeched again, even louder, pointing both hands up to the sky.
Eric Verheyen, from the Netherlands for speed skating.
Eric turned and smiled at his fellow athletes at the table, a bright smile that matched his bright House of Orange shirt.
Moses Alner Shabat, from Kenya for marathon, 5,000 meter and 10,000 meter.
A few athletes gasped in the room, then turned to stare at Mo. He was by far the most famous and immediately recognizable athlete there, having become the face for the most recent Nairobi Summer Games. Moses was only the third man to win a marathon gold for Kenya since 1956. But with his home country as the host country, and to almost everyone's surprise, including his own, he also won the gold medals in both the 5,000-meter and 10,000-meter events. No one had ever done that trifecta before. And with the 3 wins in long-distance running, both in track and field and the marathon, he became the most famous athlete in the world overnight, giving rise to the hashtag momentum. Keep on going and never give up were his Mo mantras, and now the world's. But his famous outward persona did not mesh well with his inward persona. He grew up dirt poor, running the countryside in Kenya, dreaming of one day winning the gold medal. The endorsements and prestige weren't the goals for him. They were, unfortunately, a necessary side effect to pay for his equipment, coaches, and training. He made sure at least half of the endorsements paid for the expenses of the rest of the Kenyan Olympic team. He didn't mind sharing. He grew up with 8 brothers and sisters. So in his mind, it went with the territory. Mo hated all the attention of the room on him, and he pretended to put his head down to examine the paperwork Director Xi put in front of him.
Luis Emmanuel Suarez, from Cuba for springboard and platform diving.
Gracias, Manny, por favor, he said, making the sign of the cross, kissing the St. Mary medal hanging around his neck and putting his hand over his heart, nodding slightly to the group.
Yogitaka Sito, from Japan for sport climbing.
A very well-groomed, meticulously dressed man bowed his head reverently to Ambassador Liew.
Josie and Jodie McKenzie, from Australia for artistic synchronized swimming.
The identical twins turned and smiled at each other in perfect unison, as if a mirror were next to a single person. Both were impeccably dressed in green sequin tops and makeup that would rival any drag queen in a New York nightclub.
Ariel Ariana Fox, from the Federated States of Micronesia for surfing.
A striking young woman with dark hair, dark eyes, and light brown skin, who exuded the essence of laid-back cool that accompanied most surfers, leaned forward and smiled.
Ari, please. Good.
She had almost an American accent, waving hello.
And finally Greta von Stryther, from Germany for alpine skiing.
The blonde with piercing blue eyes nodded her head. Danke schön. Liew put down the list and continued.
Every athlete will be allowed to bring any and all equipment required for their sport on this trip. Your coaches are allowed to record training sessions for each of you, but once we leave Earth, all communications with your home world will cease.
What if we say no? A sheepish Moses asked while looking down at the privacy agreement, not making eye contact with any other athlete or Liew.
This is your individual decision and I leave it up to you. But seeing worlds other than your own, meeting other life forms, and being a part of a historic first for humanity are only the beginning of what awaits if you agree. Most importantly, for each of you, it allows you another chance to win. You each have 24 hours to discuss this with your coaches and make your decision. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, ladies and gentlemen. Humanity will only ever be introduced to the galaxy once, and you all have been chosen to be a part of this momentous event. It is an honor for you, and for me to be a part of this with planet Earth. Thank you.
As Ambassador Liew turned and reached out, the revolving orbs flew back into his possession. He quietly left the room through a wooden panel that would never be mistaken for a door, as Director Xi stepped up to the head of the conference table.
We look forward to your answers, and please, before you leave this room, today's non-disclosure agreement must be signed. That's the single sheet in front of you. Even if you choose not to go, this meeting must be kept above top secret. Thank you.
One of the older coaches immediately barged up to Director Xi, peppering her with questions.
Where are these games taking place? How are they going to get there? What will they eat? Where will they stay? Are there going to be facilities for training? What specific events are at the games? How long are they going to be gone? Who will watch over them? Some of these athletes are minors.
Mr. Sayers eyed not only his prodigy Amy Ride, but Stoke the Jam and Zhang Yossi Chen as well.
Not to worry, Mr. Sayers. It's all in the agreement,
she said, tapping on the thick contract he had grabbed out of Ms. Ride's hands.
Excuse me, Director Xi,
said Amy, who stepped beside her coach.
What does UNOOSA stand for? I've never heard of it before.
Director Xi smiled at the young athlete.
United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs.
Oh, Outer Space Affairs, well, this would qualify.
She smiled at the director while taking back the contract from her coach.
Yes, Ms. Ride. It does.